Good morning. My name is James White. I'm the incident meteorologist assigned here to the Eaton fire. Last time I talked to you all, we were discussing a Santa Ana wind event and the possibility of what might happen if some stronger winds mix down lower into the fire. I'm happy to say that over the past 2 days, we've gone through that Santa Ana wind pattern, and we've seen very little wind actually reach down to the lower elevations, mid slopes of the fire. And in fact, some of the wind speeds down here have been calmer than they were in a couple days preceding. So that's wonderful news. That's great news, in that a lot of that weather didn't materialize. That's not to say that it wasn't around. There were a lot of observations of very high wind yesterday. Some of the weather stations, just a couple of ridges north of the fire, recorded gusts in excess of 70 miles an hour. And especially if you're on the highway here on the west side and you went north yesterday, it would have been really windy. There was also, a couple days ago, we observed a lot of those winds that were channeling just west of the fire into La Cañada, that kind of area. So it was really blowing near JPL. Just thankfully it wasn't really mixing down just that next ridge over. And that's one thing I want to talk about is, you might hear reports. People are like, hey, maybe it wasn't as windy as you were expecting. It certainly wasn't as windy as it was on January 7th. And why might that be? That's because these Santa Ana wind events occur in what we call stable conditions, what meteorologists call stable conditions. That makes the wind extremely inconsistent and difficult to predict where it's going to be. So something like a hurricane is very unstable, and so the wind is everywhere. It doesn't matter where you're in the hurricane, it's going to be windy all over the place because it's mixing it everywhere. But when these wind events happen in stable conditions, like Santa Ana's do, that makes it very inconsistent in where the location. You could have really strong wind on one ridge, and then you could go over to the next ridge and be dead calm. That's because it really just focuses that wind into specific areas. And where exactly it focuses it and when is very, very difficult to predict. So that's one of the challenges with Santa Ana wind predictions. And it just so happened that thankfully this one didn't seem to spread around very much. It stayed very focused, and that was good news for our fire. That said, we're not quite out of the woods yet. Even though our wind threat has really decreased and will continue to decrease for the next several days, it's still very, very dry, especially for January. We've had RHs in the 10%, 15% for multiple days now, and the effect of that drying can really accumulate over time, and we're going to continue to be dry through Thursday. So that's one of the main concerns we're looking at is although we don't have the wind, that doesn't mean there aren't still some fire weather concerns. The good news is there's very high confidence that we're heading into a much more moist pattern this weekend. So we're looking at much better humidity recoveries, much higher humidity in general, and there is even a very slight chance of rain in there. Though any rain we get on this fire is likely to not even be measurable. It'd be just a very light drizzle. In any case, it'll be much more favorable conditions for fighting fire. Just a quick heads up, there is already high confidence that won't last long. We are going to return to a drier pattern next week, and there's a lot of signals that show that we're likely to have some of those offshore Santa Ana winds again. The strength of that remains very uncertain, so we'll make sure to keep you updated on that. But unfortunately, that break does look pretty short, so stay tuned.